Insane Mike back again. Time for another edition of my top 100 favorite films of all time. And so let's get this train a going, man. There's a shit ton of movies to still go over. This next batch, as I grabbed them, I noticed that these are all from directors that I really like and admire. Again, these are all directors that, in one form or another, have influenced me as my own director. I'm not saying that this batch is just strictly the directors I admire. I think there's dozens of them. Some of I've already talked about in previous episodes of this, but there's a lot of directors that really influenced me, and a lot of those movies are here. So. First up, we're going to talk about the worst DVD cover of all freaking time. So much I hate this cover. I really need to get the Blu-ray. But Night of the Creeps by Fred Dekker. Fred Dekker has only really directed, 3 movies? He's done more writing than directing. I really like him as a writer. His sensibility is right in line with mine. I love how he, with his 2 major horror-themed films, Night of the Creeps and Monster Squad, which probably will show up on a video, on one of these videos, that the mashing of different monsters in different genres, this is just cram full of different genres. You got 50s space alien movies, you've got slashers, you've got 80s teen sex comedies. It's all of these different genres and all the tropes from those mixed into one film, and it works brilliantly. The effects are awesome. The little slug creatures are really cool. The zombie makeup is really neat, and the characters and the performances are awesome. And one of the other things I really like about this movie, and I also like about Fred Dekker's writing, is that the characters are funny and relatable. A lot of the comedy in this movie is because of the characters, not at the expense of the horror. And that's what I think makes it for a good horror/comedy, is that the comedy comes out of the situation with the characters, not the situation with the monsters or any of the stuff that's supposed to be scary. But the characters are relatable. Some of the dialogue is really funny and really great and well written. So, but again, worst DVD cover ever. What is it? Fucking yellow, and such the mismatch of posting. What? Oh, I just hate it. I hate that cover so much. Oh, but doesn't detract from how awesome of a movie it is. Okay, and as a gore hound myself, it's got some great gore moments. The zombie with his face just peeled off there, walking into frame. Oh, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful sight. I used to have the Fangoria pull-out poster of that. It's awesome. Another director that I like, that I don't think gets enough recognition, because I gravitate towards his films, yet he's not an overly successful. He has a lot of flops in his track record, but he's still a big Hollywood commercial filmmaker. And I'm talking about Frank Oz, of all people. I love the movies that Frank Oz has directed. And my favorite of his of all time, also because I'm a huge Steve Martin fan, is Bowfinger. But you could probably guess the ultimate attraction of this movie, as I mentioned on a previous episode, that I really like movies about making movies. And to me, this to me is almost like what it was like on set of an Ed Wood movie, or an Andy Mulligan movie, or a Herschel Gordon Lewis movie, or even a Fred Olen Ray movie of run and gun guerrilla filmmaking, stealing shots, stealing performances, stealing locations. And this movie is hilarious. And I think it's some of the best Eddie Murphy ever. I've never been a huge Eddie Murphy fan, but between this movie and Coming to America, that's the 2 best things I think Eddie Murphy has ever done. And this movie is so underrated. I don't know how it did. It came out in '99. I don't know how it did at the box office or anything. I didn't get to see it in theaters because it felt like it was gone in a matter of seconds. But but it's just so good. And if you like the art of filmmaking and like behind the scenes type stuff, definitely check out this movie. I mean, it's a satire. It's a complete exaggeration, almost a cartoon version of how to make a movie, but it really speaks to the filmmaker in me, and I find it hilarious. Next, I'm also a big Jim Wynorski fan, and my all-time favorite Jim Wynorski film from 1986 is Chopping Mall. I remember seeing this cover on the VHS back in the day, and I refused to rent this movie. Whenever I rented like about everything from every horror film from every video store that was in my hometown. But like I just hated this cover. I thought it looked stupid, and it wasn't until really probably about, I want to say, 10, 15 years ago tops, maybe even not that long, that I watched this movie and just rediscovered this movie, and I freaking love it. You know, it's about killer robots in a mall and a bunch of teens that hang out in the mall after hours. You know, totally within my wheelhouse. You know, this is, if you ever seen my film Demonica, you could definitely see some inspiration drawn from Chopping Mall with this movie. And again, I mentioned on a previous episode that I am a huge Garrett Graham fan, and Garrett Graham, although it's a small part, and he literally chews the scenery in it, no pun intended. But Garrett Graham's in this movie, and it's got one of the best head explosions in cinema history. Feels like the whole budget went to that head explosion, and you know, and it just goes from right off the top. It's got some tons of great cameos in it, like Dick Miller, Paul Bartel, Mary Warnoff, and it also stars. Oh, I always forget her name, from Kelly Maroney from Night of the Creeps, or not Night of the Creeps, Night of the Comet, which actually is probably in this pile here as well. She's in this, and so yeah, this movie is just great. I don't know what shopping mall has a locker room for the employees of the mall, but I guess another way of getting some boobs on screen, you know, hey, you know, it works, right? So, moving on next, again, my favorite director of all time, the biggest influence on me as a filmmaker myself, and that's George Romero. And we're going to go all the way to the original, the very first 1968 Night of the Living Dead. How can this movie not be on everyone's top 100 list? It is the textbook for independent filmmaking. This movie practically started independent filmmaking. You know, this movie was shot. It wasn't filmed in New York. It wasn't filmed in California. It was filmed in freaking Pittsburgh. These guys pulled money together, made a movie on their own with no other influences, and it really shows off Romero as a filmmaker, his use of filling the frame, again, to tell the story. You know, one of the greatest shots in this film is when Ben clubs a zombie in the head and pushes him out the door, and as that zombie backs up, we reveal two or three more zombies behind him coming out of the shadows. It's a great shot. Tells us a ton without using a single word of dialogue. So this movie is a classic. George Romero we are so indebted to him as horror fans and as fans of film in general. Again, not only did he pioneer independent filmmaking, but he also invented a horror monster. Zombies, as we know them today, are all thanks to George Romero. The Living Dead is because of George Romero. It had not been done in this way ever before. And then you can also go on about like the social commentary of the film, some of which is just by accident, but still you know, ballsy at that time in 1968 with the culture the way it was, is to put your lead as a black man. And not only that, but have a scene in the film where a black man slaps a white woman to the point of unconsciousness. You know, talk about courageous filmmaking, and they didn't even think twice about it. Again, no outside influences tell them they can or cannot do these things. So, Night of the Living Dead, brilliant film. Another one of my all-time favorite filmmakers, probably up there with George Romero, and that is John Waters. John Waters, I'm a huge fan of John Waters, and as a writer and a director, I draw a lot of influence from John Waters. I love how he pushes the envelope with his dialogue, with his content of his films, and we got a twofer here of great examples of that, and that is, of course, his classic, the one that really put him on the map, the one he's probably the most known for, and that is Pink Flamingos from 1972. Again, the year I was born. Interesting, right? And Female Trouble from 1974. Both starring Divine. Also a huge fan of Divine. She will be missed. She is missed. She had passed away, several years ago. But both these movies are great. Some of the best work from John Waters from both these movies. What I love about these movies is that they are offensive. They're disgusting. They really push the envelope. But there's still some major redeeming qualities to this. I should never ever mention this out loud, but a store that I used to manage a long time ago, we had a party at my apartment where I invited the crew over because we were celebrating, having a good year or something. Maybe it was our Christmas party, I don't remember. And we watched Pink Flamingos, and again, as gross and shocking as Pink Flamingos can be, everybody was still just was into the film, because even though these are despicable characters, there's still something endearing about the characters in this movie, and the ability of John Waters to take such despicable characters and such disgusting content and still make it like entertaining and hilarious and endearing is incredible, and nobody else has ever been able to top that. Another director that's a huge influence on me, and this one's a little out there because of the fact that his films aren't really that well made, but I love them anyway. And from 1964, 2000 Maniacs, directed by Herschel Gordon Lewis. Love Herschel Gordon Lewis movies. Love them all. This is probably the favorite of mine. Another one of his films is going to show up in this top 100, but this one is hands down my favorite. And it's probably one of his best, at least of his gore films, this one's the best made. So, 2000 Maniacs. Another director that I don't follow as much as I used to, but I've always loved him, and he's always been a big influence on me, and that's Quentin Tarantino. And out of all of his movies that he's done, I still gravitate towards his first film, Reservoir Dogs, as being my favorite. And it was a shock to me to find that Reservoir Dogs is the only movie that of Quentin Tarantino's that made my top 100. So, and it's not like his other films are not good. They're all great. But Reservoir Dogs, obviously the first one I had seen of his, I followed his career chronologically. I saw Reservoir Dogs on a bootleg before it even ever came out. Shh, don't tell him. But obviously I've redeemed myself because I own 2 copies of this on DVD, and I owned it on VHS back in the day too. So I paid my dues back from watching that bootleg. All right, just chill out. But I like simplistic stories that don't take place in a ton of different locations. If it's like limited locations, I love simplistic storytelling like that, and putting a group of criminals that don't know each other in a intense situation and throw them all into one room and let that play out. I love it. And this was like also one of the early films of telling a story out of chronological order. So kudos to that too. I mean, it's been done to death now, and it's lost its appeal, but it was done really well here in Reservoir Dogs. and some great dialogue. That opening scene of the talk about Madonna's Like a Virgin video is at the diner some of the best written dialogue in cinema history. So, yes, I said it. Lastly, in this video, I'm going to talk about, again, I mentioned on a previous, I think in episode 1 of this series, Bob Clark, and the early films of Bob Clark. I'm a huge Bob Clark fan. He trails off for me after A Christmas Story. To me, that was probably his last great film. I mean, I love the Porky's movies. But after that, when he was doing like Baby Geniuses or even The Couch Trip, I was like so disappointed in The Couch Trip. But you know, fuck Baby Genius, those Baby Genius movies. I don't know what the hell, why Bob, why? But the most important films out of his filmography for me are the ones from the 70s, and this is 1974 to me the true start of the slasher genre, and that is Black Christmas. This movie, it's awesome. It just reeks of atmosphere. It's got some really funny parts in it too. Again, based on the characters, there's some really fun and witty dialogue that goes on between the girls and everything that I just really love. You got John Saxon in there, which is amazing. But it's really scary and creepy. The ending is such a one of the great downer endings of all flippin' time. Black Christmas. It's an annual Christmas viewing for me. This is a Christmas movie I watch every single year. So that's it for this video. We'll be back again to keep chipping away at all these movies of my favorite 100 movies of all time.